As I stepped aboard the Calypso II, I was struck by the sleek, futuristic design of the sailing yacht. The ship's crew, a group of women ranging in age from their 20s to their 80s, moved about the deck with a sense of purpose, their red beanie hats standing out against the deep blue of the Aegean Sea. Bastian, ever the curious one, turned to Regina.
Hey, are they related to Jacques Cousteau, the famous undersea explorer?
Regina shot him a warning look.
Let's focus on the task at hand.
As we waved goodbye to Bermusa, trepidation washed over me. Who were these women, and where were we heading? A striking blonde woman in her mid-40s approached us, her eyes alight with intelligence.
Welcome aboard the Calypso II. I'm Alcipe,
she said, her voice carrying easily over the hum of the ship's engines. Bastian flashed the biggest grin.
Alcipe? Sure you are.
Alcipe winked at him, flicking her hair to one side.
I hope you're ready for a journey like no other.
I watched as the crew prepared the boat for departure, their movements precise and efficient. The deck of the Calypso II was a marvel of modern engineering, with gleaming white surfaces and sleek aerodynamic curves.
Solar hydro sail technology harnesses sun, wind, and waves to propel the vessel. Our family has a long tradition of innovation,
Alcipe said as we followed her toward the helm, a raised platform at the rear of the ship. It was equipped with an array of high-tech screens and controls that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. I couldn't quite believe the sheer scale and sophistication of the vessel. Bermusa told us you'd help us find an advanced matriarchal civilization, I said, flashing a cheeky smile at Alcipe. I found my gaze drifting toward Bastian. He was at the center of a group of young sailors, all of whom seemed delighted by his stories. Bastian gestured enthusiastically, his face flushed with excitement as he regaled them with tales of our adventures. As if sensing my gaze, Bastian glanced over at me, his eyes meeting mine across the deck. He flashed me a grin, his face lighting up with a warmth that made my heart skip a beat.
Back to work, girls. Stop flirting with the handsome devil. Let's meet Chileno. She's our captain,
she said, as we approached an intriguing figure sporting a magnificent mustache with tips curled skyward. Celaeno approached me with an infectious smile, her eyes sparkling with mischief.
So, you're the journalist who's been stirring up trouble with our resident YouTube sensation.
I couldn't help but return her smile. Guilty as charged, I replied, extending my hand. Amalia Rose. It's a pleasure to meet you, Captain. Chileno grasped my hand firmly, her grip strong and confident.
The pleasure is all mine, Amalia. I've heard great things about your work. It takes a lot of courage to pursue the truth, no matter where it leads.
I felt a rush of pride at her words, mixed with a twinge of uncertainty. I just hope I'm doing the right thing, I confessed, my gaze drifting back to Bastian. Chileno followed my gaze, her expression softening.
Trust your instincts, Amalia, and don't be too hard on yourself, or on him. We all have our own paths to follow, and sometimes they lead us to unexpected places.
Bastian took a step toward her.
Good to meet you. Before we embark on this journey, do you think we could grab a bite to eat? I don't know about you ladies, but I'm starving.
He was right. I, too, was in need of some sustenance. Alcipe's gaze snapped to Bastian, her eyes narrowing with a sudden intensity.
I'm afraid there's no food available on this journey we're taking,
she said, her voice firm and unyielding. Then she turned to me and said,
To find your advanced civilization, we need to travel to the past, 205 BCE to be precise.
As we pulled away from the dock, the hum of the engines intensified, sending vibrations through the deck beneath my feet. Seagulls wheeled overhead, their cries mingling with the splash of the waves against the hull. We're totally ready, I replied, eager to know more, even as my gut growled with hunger. But I have to ask, what's the significance of the year 205 BCE? How does it tie into the Voynich Manuscript and the lost civilization we're chasing? Alcipe leaned against the railing, the wind tousling her hair.
That year, the Romans were in a state of panic. They had witnessed 2 suns in the skies over South Italy, and at night, there had been an eerie light that lingered for a time. Showers of stones shot across the heavens from east to west, all of which were seen as omens of impending doom, especially after their losses against Hannibal and the Carthaginians.
I listened intently, trying to piece together the puzzle in my mind. In the distance, I could see the rugged coastline of Santorini receding, its whitewashed buildings and blue-roofed churches growing smaller with each passing moment. Alcippe continued.
The Romans consulted the Sibylline books, which predicted that they would defeat the foreign foe if the Great Mother from Ida was brought to Rome. A delegation was sent to the Oracle of Delphi to interpret this prophecy, and that's where we believe they made a critical error.
My curiosity piqued. What kind of error?
We are convinced that Apollo's priestess, Pythia, misunderstood the prediction of the Sibylline books. It was an honest mistake. You see, years earlier, the books had rightly foretold the fall of a meteor in Pergamum, now Turkey, where the Magna Mater was worshipped. The meteor was kept in her temple on Mount Ida in Pergamum, and was itself worshipped as the goddess. So the Roman ambassadors, acting on the advice of the Oracle of Delphi, went to Pergamum and retrieved the black stone.
As Alcippe spoke, I noticed the captain hunched over a sonar screen, her brow furrowed in concentration.
Is everything okay, Seleno?
Give her all she's got. We've got company.
My heart raced as I realized we were being pursued by an unidentified object beneath the waves. The Calypso surged forward, its engines roaring to life as we tried to outrun our mysterious follower. Despite the growing tension, Alcippe remained focused on her story.
The Magna Mater was brought to Rome in the Navis Salvia in April 204 BCE. This event marked a turning point in Roman history as they went on to defeat the Carthaginians and establish themselves as a dominant empire. However, the true wisdom and power of the goddess, which could have led them down a different path, was never truly attained.
I struggled to keep my balance as the ship pitched and rolled, the mysterious object still in pursuit. Bastian, his face pale, turned to Alcippe.
So the stone wasn't the good omen the Sibylline books were speaking of?
She shook her head, a hint of sadness in her eyes.
The key to a different future was kept elsewhere. A future guided by knowledge and cultivation rather than force and domination.
She paused, her gaze distant as if lost in thought.
Centuries later, early Christian writers painted a horrible picture of the rituals related to the Magna Mater, projecting their own values and insecurities onto the practices. They wrote of bloodbaths, incest, emasculation, self-castration, and orgies, accounts that led to the great Roman witch hunts and the erasure of paganism. St. Peter's Basilica on Vatican Hill now stands atop the Magna Mater's shrines.
I shook my head, trying to wrap my mind around the implications of her words. So, if it wasn't for Delphi's mistake, things would have been different. Alcippe smiled, a flicker of wistfulness in her gaze.
As Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction writer, once said, if the gift had been found and understood, by this time we would not merely have sent a few men to the moon, we would have colonized all the stars visible to the naked eye. Instead, the gift was lost to the ages.
Regina shot Alcippe a disapproving look.
We don't need to colonize anything. We've done enough of that.
As the Calypso raced through the turbulent waves, the tension on deck was palpable. I gripped the railing tightly, my knuckles turning white as the mysterious object pursuing us crashed against the hull with a sickening thud. The ship shuddered under the impact, and for a moment I feared we might capsize. Seleno, her face a mask of grim determination, barked orders to the crew.
Deploy the crabs and get ready to launch the countermeasures.
I watched in awe as some of the crew jumped into 4 sleek, oval-shaped submersibles just before they detached from the Calypso 2 and plunged into the churning waters. The cyber crabs, as they were called, were a marvel of modern engineering, highly maneuverable underwater vehicles equipped with advanced AI, sensors, and manipulators. As the cyber crabs sped towards the unidentified object, I caught a glimpse of it on one of the monitors. A sinister-looking submersible bristling with cameras and other sensors. It moved with an eerie, almost alien grace, its movements too precise and calculated to be human. The crabs quickly surrounded the hostile submersible, their powerful lights piercing the murky depths. They began to probe and prod at its hull with their articulated manipulators, searching for weaknesses. Suddenly, the enemy submersible lashed out, a pair of razor-sharp, scythe-like appendages emerging from its sides. It spun and twisted, trying to eviscerate the crabs with its deadly blades. I watched in horror as one of the crabs was caught in the submersible's grasp. The noise was almost deafening. Teleno gasped.
The crab's carbon nanotube shell is groaning under the immense pressure.
But just as I thought it would be crushed, the crab twisted free, leaving a jagged gash in the enemy's hull. The battle raged on, our crabs working in perfect unison to outmaneuver and outfight their opponent. They used their advanced sensors to anticipate the submersible's moves, dodging and weaving through the water with incredible agility. But the enemy was relentless, its movements becoming more erratic and desperate as it sought to break free from the crab's grasp. It slammed into the Calypso's hull again and again, each impact sending shockwaves through the ship. I stumbled and nearly fell, catching myself on the railing at the last moment. That's when I heard a scream pierce through the chaos. My heart stopped as I saw Regina lose her balance and tumble overboard, plunging into the turbulent waters below. "Regina!" I cried out, my voice barely audible over the roar of the battle. I watched helplessly as she struggled to stay afloat, the violent churning caused by the clashing submersibles threatening to pull her under at any moment. Bastian, without hesitation, leaped into action. He grabbed a life preserver and dove into the water, swimming towards Regina with powerful strokes. The waves crashed over him, but he pressed on, determined to reach her. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest as I watched Bastian battle the currents. He managed to reach Regina, wrapping an arm around her waist and pulling her close. Together, they fought against the pull of the water, slowly making their way back to the Calypso. The crew sprang into action, throwing a rope ladder over the side of the ship. Bastian helped Regina grab hold, and they began the arduous climb back to safety. I rushed to the railing, my hands outstretched, ready to help pull them aboard. As soon as they were within reach, I grasped Regina's arm, hauling her over the railing and onto the deck. She collapsed, coughing and sputtering, her body shaking from the ordeal. I quickly wrapped a towel around her shoulders, trying to provide some warmth and comfort. Bastian clambered over the railing, his clothes dripping and his hair plastered to his forehead. He flashed a lopsided grin, his chest heaving as he caught his breath.
Well, that was refreshing. I'll add flotation device to my CV.
Around me, the crew struggled to maintain their footing, their faces etched with fear and determination. Alcipe, who had been watching the battle on the monitors, suddenly leapt into action.
The submersible is being controlled remotely. We need to jam its communication signal.
Chelino raced to one of the control panels and began typing furiously, her fingers a blur on the keys. Moments later, the crabs attacked anything on the submersible that looked like a comms device. The effect was immediate. The enemy submersible faltered, its movements becoming sluggish and uncoordinated. The crabs pressed their advantage, swarming over the crippled vessel like a pack of hungry predators, all together sinking fast away from the Calypso.
Well done, gals.
With a final wrenching motion, the crabs tore open the submersible's hull, exposing its inner workings to the cold, crushing depths. The vessel imploded, crumpling in on itself like a discarded soda can. As the debris settled and the adrenaline began to fade, I realized I had been holding my breath. I exhaled slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. The crew of the Calypso 2 erupted in cheers and applause, their relief and elation palpable.
Let's clean up the debris, gals. No trash left behind.
As the excitement died down, I turned to Cheleno, my curiosity getting the better of me. "Who are they?" I asked, gesturing towards the debris of the mysterious object that had pursued us. "And why were they trying to stop us?" Alcipe's expression grew somber, her blue eyes darkening as she met my gaze.
These waters have been at the center of an archaeological battle for a long time. A recent international expedition suffered significant upheaval from right-wing businessmen and politicians, including a local mayor. They see our work as a threat to their power and their control over the narratives of the past.
She paused, glancing out over the waves as if searching for the right words.
Officially, we are only able to work on environmental restoration in these waters because of the history and the global clout of our family's organization.
I nodded slowly, trying to wrap my mind around the implications of her words.
But because they can't stop us publicly.
Cheleno continued, her voice taking on a harder edge.
They try to destroy our equipment, to sabotage our efforts in any way they can.
I felt a chill run down my spine at the thought of the powerful forces arrayed against us. I wanted to learn more as fast as humanly possible. So what was the error made by the Oracle of Delphi? Alcipe smiled.
What Delphi didn't know was that there were 2 Mount Idas, both sacred to the Mother Goddess, one in Turkey and one in Crete. On the slopes of Mount Ida in Crete was the Amari Valley, home to ancient settlements and the birthplace of the Minoan written language at Phaistos and Monastiraki.
Regina, who had been listening intently, spoke up.
Our stories say that men first received the 9 realm scrolls from the goddess on the slopes of Mount Ida.
Alcipe nodded, her gaze heavy with the weight of history.
The Amari Valley was a region of such strategic importance that it was illegally excavated by the Germans during World War II. They attempted to crush any proof that contradicted their Atlantis and Aryan race myths. The valley was known as a center of resistance to the Germans during the Battle of Crete and the subsequent occupation.
Regina sighed, her voice tinged with bitterness.
Romans and Nazis alike, stealing the gifts of the goddess for their own self-interest.
My head was spinning with all the information. I still don't understand how this all connects to the Voynich Manuscript and the lost civilization we're seeking. Alcipe blinked her sparkling eyes.
We will show you how it connects when we arrive at our destination.
And where exactly are we going? I asked, my heart pounding in anticipation.
Antikythera,
Alcipe replied, the name hanging in the air like a prophecy.
a small island halfway between Kythera and Crete.
Whoa, where they found that ancient computer.
Bastian spoke with the excitement of a 5-year-old in a candy shop. Teleno lifted the lid of a storage chest, pulling out several diving suits and handing them around. The Calypso 2 pressed on, its sleek form cutting through the waves like a knife. I took a deep breath of the salty air, letting it fill my lungs and clear my mind. Whatever secrets Antikythera held, whatever dangers we might face, I was ready.